Hello, fellow Hangman hangers on. My name is Christian, and I am back again with a Duality of Wrestling Podcast video. Thanks so much for checking out our channel and the podcast. Appreciate all of you. Now, I've gotten very regular of late in doing the usual preview and review format for AEW shows. I wanted to break that up a little bit because we had something significant happen to kick off AEW Collision last night, and that to me is a little bit more worthy of some discussion of just that element in and of itself. So I want to get into that right now. We had Hangman Adam Page come out in his home state of Virginia to open up Collision last evening. And as I was explaining to my wife a little bit earlier of why I was making this short today, this is relatively uncommon for how major wrestlers return, especially after a significant layoff in which they specifically have been unsuccessful. Take what happened this past week across the competition pond, if you will. CM Punk returned to WWE after a 3 to 4 month layoff following WrestleMania, where he lost to Roman Reigns and lost the WWE the World Heavyweight Championship to Roman Reigns. Took about 3 to 4 months off, came back on Raw in Chicago and defeated the newly crowned Sami Zayn to win the WWE Championship. That'll move, and that, based on SmackDown this past week, is moving Punk into a SummerSlam feud with Cody Rhodes. So you're talking about two top guys now in a program. Champion Punk, challenger, arguably face of the company, 1B to Roman Reigns as 1A, however you want to look at those. But either way, Punk returned into a top slot, won a title, is immediately back in the main event scene. Now, that's a pretty decent parallel to his longtime rival, for some inexplicable reason, Hangman Adam Page, who was unsuccessful in dethroning Maxwell Jacob Friedman back at Revolution for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, and as a result, can no longer challenge for the Men's World Heavyweight Championship ever. Page did address that in his promo, but I wanted to open our conversation here by sort of showing that this is not typically how things are done when main eventers come back, using Punk's return as a juxtaposition. Punk came back in a pretty big spot on a high-profile Raw in his hometown, immediately won the World Heavyweight Championship, inserted back into the main event picture at a prime pay-per-view in SummerSlam, whereas Hangman Adam Page just came out again in his home state, but just to do a promo to open Collision, which, fair or not, is widely regarded as the B show to Dynamite's A show. So that is very unusual. I can't really remember a similar instance where something like that's occurred, where a wrestler has, of the prominence of Adam Page, has taken time off following a significant and career-altering loss and just comes back, 3 or 4 months later, the same way Punk did, and just opened with a promo. Like, can you picture WWE bringing CM Punk back and just letting him cut a promo to open, I don't know, it's almost unfair to say main event, but maybe open SmackDown or open NXT? That's closer to what Collision is rather than SmackDown versus Raw. They're much more 1B versus 1A, whereas Collision is very clearly the number 2 full B show to Dynamite's A show. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure why they would go this route, but let's get into the Hangman promo on its face. First, as Hangman comes out, he comes out to his old theme music, the babyface music, and that sort of shows and telegraphs the alignment of where he's going to be before he even says a word. So we kind of know what to expect from Hangman in this return. The t-shirt they advertised for Hangman coming back out, I thought was worth noting. It was kind of fun. It set the stage a little bit for his promo, but it harkens back to his only social media post since the loss to MJF, which was talking about his life as a gardener and growing flowers. The shirt says, "Support your local pollinators and vengeful cowboys." That's fantastic. That's wrestling often gets the critique of you can't wear wrestling merch without giving away you're a wrestling fan. And frankly, most wrestling merch is usually kind of obnoxious and borderline incel wear. I say that owning several wrestling shirts myself, and there's a few of them that, yeah, I'm not wearing out in public, bro. Just not doing it. I'll wear my Tommaso Ciampa Blackheart shirt out, no problem. There are some other ones I'll wear. I'll wear my In Punk We Trust shirt. That's fine. But like even my Adam Cole Bebe shirt, I'm okay wearing. But there are definitely some that is like, maybe this one stays as just like a wear around the house, knocking around, doing housework shirt. But that's pretty cool. I like when wrestling shirts are something that where fans can feel comfortable wearing them, and people aren't going to be like, "Oh, that's weird. Why are you wearing that?" You're not going to get strange looks from people, especially friends and family. I've had to explain wrestling shirts I'm wearing before, and that's never a fun conversation. That's always an awkward conversation. So I like this shirt for Hangman. He also got a haircut, and it looks a little soccer mommy. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to and digestion on my part. It's not that it looks bad on him. It's just not the hanger we're used to. Hangman opens the promo saying he's a gardener, talking about, seeing birds that have never come to his yard before, which again feels like a little bit of foreshadowing. It talks about butterfly weed. I don't know anything about what that is, but he seemed very excited about it, so good for him. He did mention something that flew under the radar a little bit and wasn't a focal point of his promo, but I want to touch on it. He mentioned, "I wish I never knew what cervicular radiculopathy is." And, I guess I granted his wish, at least from my end, because I don't know what the hell that is, so I had to look it up. And fun fact about me, I used to run a group of medical journals, and one of them was a spine surgery publication alongside orthopedic medicine and sports medicine journals. So I can speak that language a little bit. So I went to look up exactly what cervicular radiculopathy, I can't even say it, cervicular radiculopathy is. And per WebMD, I'm not going to use AI because, as always, fuck AI. But cervicular radiculopathy is a condition caused by a pinched nerve in your neck. It causes when your cervical spinal cord or nerve roots arising from it become compressed by the cervical I don't know why I can't say cervical. That's a normal word. Cervical vertebrae. Your cervical spine or neck is formed by 7 small vertebrae that begin at the base of your skull, which is the area affected by cervicular radiculopathy. Hey, I got it, in one non-paused saying that time. The nerves that run through your cervical spine send messages between your muscles and brain. The roots of these nerves branch out through openings in your vertebrae called foramen. Damages to these nerve roots can cause pain and loss of sensation along the nerve's pathway into your arm and hand, depending on where the damage occurs. Often, cervicular radiculopathy gets better on its own without treatment. If yours doesn't, there are non-surgical and surgical treatments that can help. All right, that's a lot to say. It's the nerve issue that Hangman has been dealing with, that's in his cervical spine, specifically in the neck, due to a compressed or pinched nerve. Sounds super painful. I'm sure that it is. I'm sure it's very uncomfortable for him, and the man definitely deserved time off even without this medical condition befalling him. Now, knowing that this is something he was battling at that time, I think we can all agree guy deserved as much time off as necessary to make sure his body is right, to make sure the creative is right for his return. So again, it makes it a little bit, I guess, odd that they did things in this fashion, but AEW's creative has been so on fire lately. They deserve the benefit of the doubt from me. That's probably going to be the thematic message I stick with during this sort of mini analysis, but I did want to, go into it for anybody who hadn't been like, hey, what was Hangman talking about with cervicular radiculopathy? So I wanted to sort of elaborate a bit on that based on the little bit of research that I've done and the background knowledge I have. The main theme of Hangman's promo was he was planting seeds. He talked about planting seeds in the garden and it being excited to watch that grow. And he, used this as a segue into saying this promo is going to plant a seed. I don't know where it's going to grow, where and how it's going to grow, if it's going to grow at all. Obviously it is, because that's how wrestling creative works. Otherwise, why would we be doing it? But I like it. It's a nice transition from his social media post to the merchandise to the promo. I like the alignment. Creatively well-focused. I enjoy it. There's a little bit of anxious millennial cowboy Hangman that came through when he was talking about the MJF match. There was definitely some self-doubt and some almost anxiety and nor depression that you could see seeping out from his words, body language, and facial expression during this promo. And I thought that was worth noting considering we're on to the next evolution of the Hangman character. And it harkens back to one of the original iterations of Hangman, which was the anxious millennial cowboy. I found it interesting that Hangman sort of was calling back to that in the way he spoke and the way he carried himself. Hangman confirms that the stipulation from Revolution, where he can never challenge for the World Championship ever again, isn't a contract that's ironclad and filed away in some filing cabinet somewhere with dried ink on it. It is more of a gentleman's agreement that was always sort of said under the radar and not really talked about a great deal. Now we can confirm in canon, in kayfabe, that this is not a contractual stipulation. They're going to have to do a lot of mental gymnastics to get around. Hangman talks about being a man of his word, and he will honor that stipulation. That easily plants the seeds for how you get around this. All it's going to take is a heel turn back into either homicidal psychopath Hangman or some other dickhead version of Hangman where he said, you know what, I don't need to honor my word. People don't honor their word all the time around here, so why do I need to? So, or any other booking ways you get to that end point, but it's nice that they don't have to work around a stipulation that's already shown in a guy like Cody Rhodes, for example, that's a significant roadblock to them getting back to the World Heavyweight Championship. Cody Rhodes never did in AEW, so there's already sort of a groundwork laid that this is a significant barrier of entry back into that main event scene. So I like that they've given themselves a soft entry point to not have to retcon themselves, if that makes sense. Hangman talks about, they're, to never stop running the race, and there being miles and miles of empty track in front of him. And that's where he segues into the other options that are open on these open miles of track for him. He talks about his former partner and current dipshit TNT champion Kevin Knight. I like that he sort of threw in the dipshit phrasing that he has used during the end of his last babyface run before he took some time off. Again, shows narrative cohesion with the character. I like that. We always like when there's continuity there, and there's no continuity errors for all of my Rick and Morty fans out there. He then moves on to discussing name dropping the national champion Mark Davis. He name drops Continental champion Jon Moxley, who he says he would, quote, never turn down a fight with. And I think that's a really good seed to plant for the future. And I think we will get that match here at some point soon. But I like to pay attention to the order in which a lot of these things get dropped, because usually for items that are in the middle, if a longer list are ones that they want you to think about, but they're more than often red herrings that distract from the main goal the character is gonna move towards, and just allow for more options to be present and show that there's a wide swath of directions the character can go in from a motivational standpoint. So to me, the two that are most important based on the order they're discussed are the aforementioned current dipshit and TNT champion Kevin Knight of the Don Callis family. And the final individual he mentioned was the international champion, also of the Don Callis family, newly crowned champion Kyle Fletcher. So those to me are the two most likely targets. Off the jump, Kevin Knight is obviously a little bit busy right now with the Darby Allin feud that I think we're going to see culminate at All In with a TNT Championship match. I'm still on the ledge that I think that's going to end up as a coffin match. I think that suits the scale and scope of the pay-per-view. I think it suits how big that show is. I think it suits what the feud has become, and I think that's something the fans are really going to enjoy seeing. I think it's going to be another thing that'll help sell tickets for the gigantic AF Wembley Stadium. So I think that's where they end up in that feud. So I think that, at least in the short term, takes Kevin Knight off the table. Kyle Fletcher, I'm not sure is on the table either. I think we're going to see that feud with Takeshita continue a little bit more, because that just culminated in Takeshita losing the international championship to Kyle Fletcher. But I still think they expand that feud to include Okada a bit more, and I think them doing a three-way at All In, Okada, Takeshita, and Fletty, is going to be in a fantastic match if they go that direction, and I think it's the most logical direction to sort of put a bookend on that feud in a way the fans are really going to enjoy at a giant show like Wembley. So I'm thinking that's where they're going to go. But I think this was just a really good way to build after that, and that's where I think maybe following All In, I think that's where we'll see Hangman direct his energy, is probably at either Kevin Knight or Kyle Fletcher. I'm not sure which happens. I tend to be of the side that the item and individual mentioned last are typically the ones that the character is focusing on the most, because it's mentioned last, because it's like the last thing that's top of mind to them. So it feels like Kyle Fletcher will be an early target for Hangman, but that's just speculation. So Hangman then moves on to mention, he spent 7 years of his life chasing the All Elite Wrestling World Championship, and we now need to find out who is Hangman without the ability to challenge for the World Heavyweight title. Without the belt, who is Hangman? Hangman admits he doesn't know, but we're damn sure going to find out. He's going to have to find something else to do, as he puts it, but you bet your ass I will. And that's where, I think the promo very easily circles back to all of the other also ran championships besides the World Heavyweight Championship that he's obviously blocked from at the moment. And I think this also sets up very well that I don't think you see this stipulation get tossed aside in the immediate future. I know I mentioned earlier that they now don't have to retcon to get around the stipulation, and very true. That's a great thing they don't have to worry about. But with all of these other options laid out and the other ones to come, you could look at doing the Continental Classic tournament at the end of the year. There's so many other things that Hangman could actually do. He could look to take the Dynamite Diamond Ring for MJF, a guy who has literally never not won the Dynamite Diamond Ring. That would be a really great first step in giving him sort of a redemption arc, being like, yeah, I lost to Max. I lost my ability to challenge for the world championship ever again to Max, but I started chipping away at that foundation and took something that's an integral part of the MJF character away in that Dynamite Diamond Ring. I think that would be also a really, really cool start. And that, I believe, that usually is done in the fall, like September, October, maybe even November. They tend to do those matches for the Dynamite Diamond Ring. I think that's around the timing that matches up. So if they were to go that route, I would love it. I think that would be a really, really good foothold to go, clawing back at MJF with a vengeance. So there's a lot of directions they can go with the Hangman character. You could put him against, the Death Riders and maybe a Claudio or a Pac that don't really have a lot of direction right now. That could be fun. A guy like Eddie Kingston isn't on TV right now, and that's could be a really great feud, especially from a promo standpoint. Can you imagine the promo battles of a vengeful Hangman Adam Page and Eddie Kingston? That would sell tickets in and of itself. I would love to see that. So there's definitely some significant optionality they have in terms of directions for the Hangman character going forward, especially as it relates to trying to get him on the All-In card. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Where do you see Hangman going, both long-term and short-term? I would say long-term being post All-In to the end of the year, short-term leading up to and including All In. So those are the two areas I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys on. What feels most likely to you? What are some dark horse candidates that maybe we haven't discussed? Let me know what you think. Again, thank you so much for watching Duality of Wrestling's podcast. I really appreciate all of you checking out the channel and all of my videos. I've watched our views slowly creeping up. I really appreciate all of you, sticking with me. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to get the Beach Break reviews up sooner. Full transparency, I had those videos done Thursday morning. I watched the whole show Wednesday night. I was so stoked to get them to you guys earlier. I had technical issues with my editing platform that took 2 days to resolve, only to find out that it was relating to the size of the video I uploaded, hence why I broke it into 2 parts. I wish they had told me that earlier, or at least given me some kind of notification. I would have been able to fix that Thursday and get that up much sooner for you all. So I apologize for making you all wait 2 full days for my Beach Break review. I will try to get content up much faster in the future, hence me doing this morning. But again, thank you all for watching. Thank you for your subscriptions and notification button clicks. They really do help me out. I'm not trying to monetize it all. I just want to build an audience and make content that all of you will enjoy. I'm Christian for Duality of Wrestling. Thanks again. See you in the next one, guys.